He was used to being invisible. 9 years old, boots held together by duct tape, a jacket that looked like it belonged to someone twice his size. No parents, no backpack, no begging, just stillness, and those eyes always watching. Every morning, he sat outside the pediatric hospital in Jackson, Mississippi. People assumed he was waiting for someone. No one asked. Not here. This was a place where silence lived next to pain. But this morning, he stood, and he spoke. Cameron Wells, millionaire tech founder, suit tailored, face frozen by months of helplessness, was wheeling his son, Leo, into another appointment. The boy hadn't walked in a year. The spark was gone. The doctors were out of answers. Cameron had started to believe in nothing. Then, "Sir," a voice called out. "Soft, I can make your son walk again." Cameron turned. It wasn't a doctor. It wasn't a miracle worker. It was a kid, ragged, poor, absolutely certain. "I don't need money," the boy added. "Just 1 hour." And Cameron froze, because deep down, in some cracked part of him, he didn't talk about anymore. He wanted to believe. And that look in the boy's eyes, it didn't ask for trust. It dared him to try. This isn't just about a boy in rags or a man who lost hope. It's about what happens when the world's forgotten kid tells the millionaire, "Let me show you what your money never could." Comment below. Would you trust a child like this with your own kid's future? Subscribe for more real, impossible but true stories that hit different. Watch until the end, because what this boy does next will rewrite everything you thought you knew about healing. He looked like nobody. Just a kid with a jacket too big for his shoulders and boots that flapped when he walked, duct tape wrapped around them like a final effort to keep everything from falling apart. People noticed him, but only enough to look away. He sat on a concrete bench outside St. Jude's Children's Hospital in Jackson, Mississippi, every morning like clockwork. Never begged, never spoke, just sat, knees tucked to his chest, eyes locked on the double doors. Some thought he was waiting for a relative. Some thought he was homeless. Most didn't think anything at all. The truth, he wasn't waiting. He was watching and remembering, because Micah Ellison, at 9 years old, was more than just some street kid with nowhere to go. He was the son of a woman who once healed people without machines, without degrees, with nothing but her hands, her patience, and her belief in what the body could still do if only someone asked it nicely enough. Her name was Janelle. To the system, she didn't matter. No formal certification, no license, just a file somewhere that said she once applied to be an aide at a rehabilitation clinic, but was underqualified. To the people she touched, she was a miracle, especially to Micah. He grew up in the corners of makeshift therapy rooms, church basements, folded tables, borrowed spaces, and overfilled shelters. He watched his mother kneel beside war veterans, stroke victims, accident survivors. He memorized the way her fingers moved, how she spoke to muscle tissue like it was a shy friend trying to find its voice again. "You don't force the body," she used to say. "You remind it." Micah remembered everything, even the day she left. She told him she had a house call. Just one. She kissed his forehead, tucked a peanut butter sandwich into his coat, and said, "Back before dark." She didn't come back, and Micah never asked the city for help, because he didn't trust systems that let people like his mother vanish. He drifted for weeks, slept near back alleys and empty church stairwells, under old newspaper in a city that never noticed, until one morning he found himself at the hospital doors, not because he needed treatment, but because he needed purpose. So he sat and watched. It started as habit. He watched how people walked, or didn't. He watched which nurses paused before pushing wheelchairs, which doctors whispered to crying parents instead of walking away. He memorized patterns. The way a recovering leg twitched before a foot lifted. The way shoulders dropped when pain became too familiar. Micah wasn't a prodigy. He was just patient, and observant, and silent. He knew how to sit still for hours without needing a screen. He knew how to listen when people didn't even know they were talking, when they told the truth in their limp, in their gait, in the way their hands trembled when holding a paper cup. He sat and listened to a city full of broken stories, waiting for the one he could help repair. Then he saw them, the man with the expensive coat and the haunted eyes, and the boy in the wheelchair who never looked up. They came every Tuesday. Same time, same route. The man, Cameron Wells, was all precision. High-end watch, crisp beard, polished shoes. But there was a heaviness in his steps, a slow ache that clung to him like smoke after fire. The boy, Leo, was about Micah's age, maybe a little younger. He sat curled into himself in a wheelchair with his hoodie pulled up, legs tucked in, not because he was cold, but because they didn't work anymore. Micah watched the way Cameron walked 5 steps ahead of the wheelchair every time. Never beside, never behind, like he couldn't bear to look back. Micah understood, because people often walked faster when they were trying to outrun guilt. He didn't know their names, but he knew their story. The father who had everything, except the one thing that mattered now, and the boy who used to run, but now sat in silence, like hope had been switched off. Micah watched them for weeks. Then, one cold Thursday morning, he stood. Cameron had just pulled into the drop-off zone. He was distracted, already thinking about the appointment they were late for. He was adjusting Leo's scarf when he heard a voice. "Sir." He looked up. Micah stood a few feet away, coat frayed, boots scuffed, hands clasped in front of him like he was about to make a case in court. "I can make your son walk again," he said. Not a question, not a pitch, a declaration. Cameron blinked, caught off guard. "Excuse me." Micah didn't flinch. "Give me 1 hour," he said. "That's all I need." Cameron straightened, suddenly defensive. "Are you what? Selling something?" Micah shook his head. "I'm offering something." Cameron scoffed. "You're a child." "So is he," Micah said, nodding toward Leo. Silence. Cameron looked at his son, who hadn't even reacted. "Look, I don't have time for this." Micah nodded. "Neither does he." That stopped Cameron cold. Not because it was rude, because it was true. He sighed, exasperated. "And what exactly are you going to do? Pray? Do magic?" "No," Micah said. "I'm going to help his body remember." Cameron opened the car door and began wheeling Leo toward the entrance. Micah didn't follow. He just called out, soft but clear. "Tomorrow. Harrington Park. 8 a.m. I'll be there. If you come, you'll see." That night, Cameron couldn't sleep. He kept replaying the words. "I can make your son walk again." He wanted to dismiss it, wanted to believe it was nonsense, but he couldn't stop thinking about the way Micah said it. No drama, no manipulation, just belief. A belief he hadn't felt in months. And something else. For a split second, when Micah spoke, Leo had looked up, really looked, for the first time in a long time. That alone was worth something. The next morning, just before 8 a.m., Cameron sat in his car in Harrington Park, engine off, watching steam rise from the grass. He didn't tell himself he believed. He just told himself he was curious. That was enough. He opened the door, helped Leo into the chair, and wheeled him across the path. And there he was. Micah. Same coat, same taped boots. But this time, he had a mat spread out on the grass, a plastic crate beside it, and a look on his face that said, "This is what I was made for." Micah knelt beside the mat, fingers moving with calm precision as he arranged everything. A folded towel, 2 tennis balls, a glass jar of thick herbal balm, and a long cloth band that looked like it was once a belt. Cameron hesitated, standing behind Leo's wheelchair. He still wasn't sure why he'd brought his son here. Pride? Desperation? Curiosity? Maybe it didn't matter anymore. He just needed something to change. Micah looked up, expression unreadable. "We start small. No pressure." Cameron gestured toward the mat. "You really want me to put him down there?" Micah nodded. "Only if he's willing." Leo blinked, then looked up at his father. "I want to try." The words stopped Cameron cold. It had been weeks since Leo said anything resembling want. He swallowed hard, then slowly helped lift his son from the wheelchair. Together, they eased him onto the mat. Micah sat cross-legged across from Leo. The two boys stared at each other, one broken but protected, the other whole but forgotten. Micah unzipped his coat, revealing a tattered sweatshirt underneath. He pulled out the bomb and twisted the cap. "You mind?" he asked Leo. Leo shook his head. Micah dipped 2 fingers into the bomb, warmed it between his palms, then gently rubbed it onto Leo's bare feet. His touch was slow, steady. Not clinical. Not like a therapist. More like someone waking up something that had been asleep for too long. "This helps blood flow," he murmured. "And memory." Leo furrowed his brow. "Feet don't have memory." Micah smiled just slightly. "They do. They remember how to carry you. They just forgot the way." Cameron shifted behind them, unsure whether to intervene or stay quiet. "Let's talk to your toes first," Micah said, tapping each one lightly. "This little guy used to wiggle. Can he try again?" Leo focused, squinting. Nothing moved. "That's okay," Micah said. "They're shy. They haven't been spoken to in a while." Cameron exhaled sharply, impatient. Is this your method? Talking to toes?" Micah didn't even look at him. "No. This is called engagement. Step 1. He pulled out the tennis ball, placed it beneath Leo's left heel, and began gently rolling it from heel to toe. Pressure tells nerves. "Hey, wake up. You're still needed." Leo squirmed slightly. "That tickles." "Good," Micah grinned. "Means someone's home in there." Cameron's arms were crossed, still skeptical, but he didn't speak again. Micah guided Leo through a set of tiny movements, flexing ankles, squeezing a rolled-up towel between his knees, breathing exercises to activate core muscles. Nothing big, nothing dramatic, just small reminders. Leo's legs didn't move, but his face changed. The stillness softened. His eyes, once dulled by disappointment, were now locked on Micah's every instruction. At one point, Micah paused. "Can I tell you a story?" Leo nodded. "My mom once helped a man who hadn't walked in 5 years. Everyone gave up on him, but she didn't. She said, if a flower grows once in a field, it can grow again, even if it forgot how." Leo smiled faintly. "Did the man walk?" "Yeah," Micah said. "Didn't run marathons or anything, but he danced with his daughter at her wedding." Silence stretched between them. Then Micah leaned in. "I think you've got that flower in you, too." After 40 minutes, Micah pulled the towel over Leo's legs and leaned back. "That's enough for today," he said. "We don't force it. We just ask kindly." Leo looked down at his feet. "I think I felt heat. In my shin. Like a warm line." "That's blood talking to nerves," Micah said. "Keep listening." Cameron helped his son back into the chair. As he did, Leo whispered, "Can we come back tomorrow?" Cameron glanced at Micah. The boy just shrugged. "Same time. Same mat." They didn't shake hands. They didn't exchange contact info. There was no paperwork, no insurance form, no clipboard. Just a nod between 3 people who'd all just seen something they couldn't explain. Back home, Cameron stood in the kitchen, staring into his coffee. ISA, housekeeper, walked in. "You look like someone saw a ghost," she said. He didn't respond. "What happened?" Leo asked to go back. ISA froze. "Back where?" "The hospital." "No," Cameron said. "The park." ISA's brow furrowed. "With him." He nodded. "He did something today. I don't know what. But Leo, he looked alive. Not like a patient. Like a kid again." ISA sat across from him. "Then maybe that boy knows something the rest of us forgot." The next day, and the next, and the next, they returned. And every time, Leo grew stronger. By the end of week 2, he could flex both ankles. By the end of week 3, he could hold pressure between his knees. By week 4, he moved his left foot half an inch. Each movement was tiny. Each one was a miracle. But no one clapped. No one celebrated. Because the work wasn't done. Other parents started noticing. A woman from a neurology ward approached Cameron one morning. "Is that your son?" He nodded. "That boy," she said, pointing at Micah. "Is he licensed?" Cameron smirked. "Nope." "Then why is your son smiling again?" He didn't have an answer. Because Micah never asked for money. Never sought credit. He just showed up. Rain or shine. Same mat. Same voice. Same belief. And Leo, day by day, began returning to himself. One afternoon, Cameron pulled Micah aside while Leo rested on the mat. "Do you even go to school?" Micah shook his head. "Where do you sleep?" "Sometimes near the bakery on Ninth. The manager lets me use the alley." "You don't have a home?" Micah shrugged. "Used to. It's gone now." Cameron looked away. "That's not right." Micah didn't answer. He didn't need pity. He needed purpose. And he'd found it. That night, Cameron brought it up to ISA again. "He can't keep sleeping behind dumpsters. Not while helping my son walk again." ISA nodded slowly. "Then do something about it." "What do I do? Adopt him?" She looked him straight in the eye. "Maybe." The next morning, as they finished their session, Cameron knelt beside Micah. "I want you to stay with us. Not forever. Just somewhere warm. Somewhere with food. A place to sleep that isn't cement." Micah didn't speak for a long time. Then quietly, "Okay, but only if I still get to help Leo." "You will," Cameron promised. "Every day." That night, Micah slept in the spare bedroom. He didn't unpack. Didn't touch the drawers. Just curled under the blanket, fully dressed, hands clasped across his chest like he might vanish in his sleep if he let go. But he didn't vanish. He stayed. And so did the work. By week 6, Leo stood for 3 seconds. By week 8, he took 2 steps, holding on to both Micah and Cameron. No reporters. No social workers. Just 2 boys and a father standing in the cold, breathing like they'd just seen a new world crack open beneath their feet. And in that moment, the boy with duct-taped boots became more than a helper. He became proof that sometimes the body just needs someone to believe it can still move, even if that someone is 9 years old, with no license, and everything to give. The first complaint didn't come from a parent. It came from a therapist. An intern, actually, rotating through the pediatric rehabilitation unit at St. Jude's. She'd been walking past Harrington Park on her way to the bus stop when she saw something strange. A child, maybe 9 or 10, kneeling beside a boy in a wheelchair, placing tennis balls under his feet, giving instructions. At first, she thought it was an innocent game, but then she noticed the hot pack, the resistance bands, the posture corrections, the technique. She knew enough to know what it looked like, unsupervised therapy. And not just any child, the son of a powerful man, receiving unauthorized physical intervention from what? A homeless kid? So she reported it. Quietly. By the time the report reached the administrative desk of the hospital, the story had already mutated. A street child was treating patients in a public park. One of those patients was the son of Cameron Wells, whose connections extended deep into donors, board members, and state legislature. That made it a problem, not because it was wrong, but because it was visible. On a Tuesday morning, crisp, cloudless, and calm, 2 plainclothes individuals from the Office of Child Health Compliance approached Micah in the middle of a session with Leo. "Are you Micah Ellison?" Micah looked up. He was sitting on the mat, guiding Leo through a new movement, raising his right knee 2 inches off the ground while gripping Micah's shoulder for balance. Leo flinched. "What's going on?" Micah whispered, "It's okay." He turned to the 2 adults, standing stiff and formal on the edge of the grass. Yes, one of them, a woman in her 40s with a clipboard and a soft but practiced tone, stepped forward. "We receive concerns about your activity with minors. We'd like you to stop what you're doing and speak with us off-site." Cameron arrived at that moment, holding coffee and a bag of breakfast sandwiches. He froze. "What's this?" he asked, tone sharp. "Mr. Wells," the woman said, "we're investigating an unlicensed individual providing rehabilitative services to your son." "Micah's not providing services," Cameron replied. "He's helping. That's what people do when systems fail." The second agent, younger, silent, stepped forward. "Regardless of intentions, the law's clear. Without certification or supervision, it constitutes unauthorized practice." Micah didn't move. Leo looked panicked now. "I don't want to stop." "I'm not stopping," Micah said. "You can talk to me after we finish." That's not how this works, the woman said, firm now. Then maybe the way this works is broken, Cameron snapped. The two agents stared him down. I'd like your names, he said. The woman handed him a card. We'll be back, she said. This isn't optional. Then they left. They crossed the line that day, not because they questioned Micah's qualifications, but because they interrupted hope in motion. And hope, once it's moving, doesn't like being told to sit still. That night, Micah didn't speak much. He sat at the kitchen table, staring at a piece of lined paper. He'd written a list. Contingencies. 1. Move sessions to new location. 2. Record progress for protection. 3. Prep Leo to work without touch. 4. Memorize state codes. Cameron sat across from him. You shouldn't have to defend what you're doing, he said. Micah looked up. I'm not defending it. I'm documenting it. Same thing, isn't it? Micah shook his head. No. One asks for permission. The other just proves you were right all along. By the end of the week, the pressure had escalated. A formal letter arrived at Cameron's office, signed by a consortium of medical professionals, urging him to reconsider exposing his son to unverified physical guidance. The tone was professional. The subtext was rage, that a child had achieved what licensed professionals couldn't, that a father with money and reach had chosen him over the system. That made Micah not just a curiosity, but a threat. On social media, a small wave began. Not viral. Not yet. Just murmurs. Have you heard about the street kid doing PT in the park? Is it legal for a minor to practice on another minor? Is that really healing? Or just desperation dressed as a miracle? Some parents in nearby support groups grew cautious. One canceled a planned visit to the park. Another asked anonymously, "Are there any real doctors backing this?" To Cameron, it felt like a slow fog rolling in. He'd seen it before. In business. In politics. Doubt didn't need to shout. It just had to whisper long enough. Micah, meanwhile, kept going. He adjusted. He no longer touched Leo during sessions. He gave instructions verbally, then stepped back and let Leo guide himself. He filmed everything with Cameron's phone and began annotating the footage with timestamps, explanations, and references to official rehabilitation guidelines his mother once left scribbled in her notebooks. He built a body of work, not to fight the system, but to make it undeniable. Then came the video. It dropped anonymously on a local parenting forum. A 2-minute clip, edited for maximum effect. It showed Micah kneeling beside Leo, holding his leg, guiding it in a movement that, without context, looked forced. There was no sound, no setup, no footage of Leo laughing, or voluntarily participating, or improving. Just the image of a child touching another child's limbs. The caption read, "Would you let this stranger experiment on your kid?" Within hours, it was reposted to 2 Facebook groups, a Reddit thread, and then, inevitably, to a local news page. They didn't name Micah, but they didn't have to. By now, anyone watching could fill in the blanks. Cameron was furious. He contacted the admin of the original page, who claimed anonymity. He filed a request to take it down, but the internet didn't care, and neither did the systems that had already made up their mind. Micah, when told, didn't flinch. He just asked one question. Did Leo walk today? Cameron nodded. 3 steps, without holding anything. Micah smiled. Then they can't undo that. That night, Cameron found a letter slipped under his front door. No name. Just 4 typed sentences. You're putting your son at risk. If anything happens, it's on you. Liability doesn't care about miracles. Take him off that mat before it's too late. He read it 3 times, then crumpled it, but he couldn't unread it. He sat on the edge of Micah's bed late, in the dark. The boy was still awake, staring at the ceiling. "I want to protect you," Cameron said. "I don't need protection," Micah replied. "You're a child. And so is Leo." Silence. Then Cameron said, "They're coming for you. Not because you did something wrong, but because you made them look like they did." Micah turned his head. "I didn't do this to make anyone look bad." "I know." Micah looked away again. "But I didn't do it to make anyone look good, either. I did it so Leo could dance at his sister's wedding someday. Cameron smiled. He doesn't have a sister. Then give him one. It didn't matter how carefully Micah worked. It didn't matter that Leo was progressing, walking short distances with a walker, holding balance for full seconds on his own, or that parents at the park had started calling Cameron privately asking, "Is he real?" The system had already decided. Micah wasn't licensed. He wasn't certified. He wasn't old enough. And worst of all, he was working. So they called a meeting. Not a trial. Not an official hearing. That would have required transparency. This was labeled an informal conversation. A closed-door discussion at the St. Jude's outpatient annex. The kind of meeting where people smiled too much and wrote nothing down. Cameron was told he could attend, but Micah had to come alone first. He agreed, but only on one condition. Leo would be in the room. The room was plain, bright, and that overly sanitized way hospitals always were. Fluorescent lights. A table in the center. For chairs. Micah sat on one side. Across from him sat a hospital administrator, a legal representative from the Child Health Department, and a rehabilitation director whose name Micah recognized from a plaque he'd once walked past in the lobby. Leo sat beside Micah, hands in his lap, eyes bouncing between the grown-ups. They started gentle. Always do. "Micah," the admin said, soft and patient, "do you understand why we've asked to speak with you today?" "Yes," Micah said, "because you think helping Leo was illegal." They exchanged glances. "Well," said the rehab director, a woman in her 50s with carefully combed silver hair, "you've been observed providing rehabilitative support without credentials or adult supervision. That raises safety concerns." Micah looked at Leo, then back at them. "Do you think Leo is less safe now than when he couldn't feel his own legs?" No one answered that. The legal representative spoke next. "Intent isn't what we're questioning. We can all agree your heart seems to be in the right place, but procedures exist for a reason." Micah nodded. "And what procedures should I have followed when Leo told me he wanted to try?" "That's not how clinical authorization works," she replied. "I'm not a clinic," Micah said. They didn't expect that answer. The admin leaned forward. "Micah, no one's trying to stop you from caring, but there are appropriate pathways for this kind of work. You could study medicine. You could intern. With time, you could." "I didn't have time," Micah cut in. The room went quiet. He didn't raise his voice, but he cut through every polite layer of protocol. "They gave up on him," he continued, nodding to Leo. "Every person sitting behind a desk, looking at a scan, giving a shrug like it was sympathy. They all walked away. I didn't." The rehab director straightened in her seat. "No one here walked away from your friend." Micah turned his head slowly, named 3 doctors who still checked on him after month 4. She blinked, looked down at the folder in front of her. Micah kept going. "You want to know why Leo walks again? Because I don't ask his legs to perform. I remind them. That's what my mom taught me." That caught their attention. "Your mother," the lawyer said. "She was a medical professional?" Micah shook his head. "No, but she helped more people than you ever will. She worked in church basements, shelters, garages. She didn't have degrees, but people called her before they called 911. "And what happened to her?" the admin asked. "She vanished," Micah replied, simply. "I think she gave too much to people who only knew how to take." The lawyer cleared her throat. "Micah, we're not here to take anything from you." "Then why am I here?" No one answered. Leo finally spoke. "He's helping me," the boy said. "He helped me feel my feet. No one else did that." The adults turned to him. "And I wanted his help. Isn't that my right?" Again, no reply. Micah reached into his backpack and took out a battered, folded piece of paper. He slid it across the table. It was a sketch, rough but detailed, of the L3, L5 nerve group, with annotations, progression notes, and manual reflex exercises. It wasn't from a textbook. It was clearly drawn by hand, with pencil and sweat. "I made this after week 2 with Leo," Micah said, "based on how his right leg responded to positional stretching. You don't have to like it, but you can't say it's not real. The rehab director picked up the page, studied it, said nothing. Micah looked at each of them, one by one, and then delivered the sentence they'd all remember long after this meeting ended. The difference between you and me is you wait for permission to care. I didn't. No one spoke for a long moment. Then the admin shifted in her seat. Micah, if we were to offer a mentorship, a structured internship, perhaps. No, he said, calmly. I don't want your mentorship. Then what do you want? Micah looked at Leo, then at the folder in front of the director, which was labeled Review Case, L. Wells. I want you to stop calling what I do a case. Stop calling my friend a liability. Stop calling movement a risk when doing nothing was what paralyzed him most. The lawyer folded her arms. Do you want to be protected under the system or not? Micah stood up. I don't want to be under the system. I want to work beyond it. And with that, he opened the door. Leo followed him. They didn't say goodbye. They didn't have to. That night, the director called Cameron. She expected outrage. What she got was a question. What did he say to you? He challenged our model, she admitted. Did he lie? No. Then maybe it's your model that needs to catch up. Click. The next morning, Micah showed up to the park as usual. Same mat, same setup. But there were others now. A father and daughter from another state. A boy named Elijah, whose mother had heard about Leo from a friend at work. A girl with cerebral palsy who asked, Can I just watch for now? And there was Leo, on his feet, standing, wobbly but proud, holding nothing but air. He took a step, then another. Micah watched, didn't touch, didn't correct, just nodded and said, Your legs remember the rest on their own. That day, Leo asked Micah something different. Do you ever think about quitting? Micah shrugged. Sometimes. Why don't you? Micah didn't answer right away. Then he said, Because I remember what it felt like when no one touched me. When I sat on that bench, waiting for someone to ask what I needed, and they just walked past me like I was furniture. Leo was quiet. Then he nodded. I don't want anyone else to feel like that either. Micah smiled. Then don't. They didn't post about it. They didn't call the press. But word got out. Because something more powerful than virality had started moving. Truth. Unfiltered. Unapproved. Undeniable. And it started with something Micah said. One sentence. That broke through years of silence. No more whispers. No more anonymous tips. No more is this real. By the time week 9 came, Micah Ellison wasn't rumor anymore. He was evidence. Hard, undeniable, measurable evidence. It began with a file, handwritten, messy, but methodical, delivered in a used envelope to a name that wasn't supposed to be involved anymore. Dr. Alyssa Warren, former director of pediatric neurorehabilitation at St. Jude's, had resigned 2 years earlier. Politics, budget cuts, creative differences with newer leadership. She'd moved to part-time consulting and stopped attending board meetings. Everyone assumed she'd disappeared into private practice. But she hadn't stopped reading, and she hadn't stopped caring. One morning, she found a brown paper envelope shoved under her office door. No return address, just her name. Inside were 30 pages of hand-drawn charts, movement logs, nerve maps, and what looked like medical sketches copied and redrawn in pencil by someone with no formal training, and an alarming amount of instinct. A post-it was attached to the top. He's walking. This is how we did it. You can ignore me, but you can't ignore the data. Emmy. At first, she dismissed it as an earnest kid's science project. But then she saw the detail in the mapping, the annotations referencing recovery plateaus, the custom progression scales calibrated by muscle group, and one thing that made her pause. Progressive timeline matching known neuromuscular healing patterns, but in half the expected duration. Dr. Warren closed her laptop and canceled her next appointment. She had to see this for herself. 2 days later, she arrived unannounced at Harrington Park. No clipboard, no badge, just an old scarf wrapped around her neck and a notebook under her arm. She stood beneath a tree and watched from a distance. Micah, now 10 weeks into his sessions with Leo, was standing beside the boy, who was, unbelievably, upright and walking between two cones, unaided. His steps were shaky but real, measured, determined. Micah kept his hands behind his back, never touching, just calling out, "Weight shift, now he'll lift. One more. You've got it." Leo wobbled, stumbled, caught himself, then finished the distance. Micah gave a single clap. 6 steps, no assist. Leo beamed. Dr. Warren's heart caught in her throat. After the session, she approached. Micah noticed her, but didn't flinch. "You're not from the city," he said. She raised an eyebrow. "How do you know?" "You're watching to learn, not to report." She smiled. "You're observant." "I have to be." She extended her hand. "Dr. Warren." Micah didn't shake it, just nodded. "I got your notes," she said. "Then you know it's real." "I do." She took a breath. "Can I test him?" "Independently. No bias. Just data." Micah looked at Leo. Leo nodded. That afternoon, she ran a battery of functional assessments. Range of motion, voluntary contraction, dynamic balance. No equipment. Just a skilled eye and a pen. Micah watched every move. Leo followed every instruction. By the end of the hour, she closed her notebook and whispered, "Jesus Christ." That night, she sent an encrypted email to the Internal Review Board. Subject: Unofficial field outcome urgent. Attached: video footage taken on her phone, test results, and a scanned copy of Micah's original timeline chart with the note, "This was not a fluke. This is rehabilitation being rewritten. You can either bury this or back it." The next morning, the clip leaked. No one knows who uploaded it first. Some say it was someone inside the review board. Others say it was a medical student who saw Dr. Warren's email left open on a shared device. Either way, the video was out. 1 minute, 22 seconds. Leo, walking 10 steps across the park, then turning, with no braces, no walker. Micah a step behind, hands folded, saying only, "Breathe. Trust your knees." The video exploded. Not millions of views. Not yet, but among the right people. Physical therapists, neurodoctors, parent forums, and more importantly, the quiet workers inside the very institutions that had dismissed Micah, the ones who believed but never had permission to say it. Within 48 hours, a prominent pediatric neurospecialist reshared the video with the caption, "This shouldn't be possible, but it is." A regional PT certification board issued a statement. "We do not endorse unlicensed therapy, but we cannot ignore results. More information needed." A parent from Mobile, Alabama, drove 3 hours just to see Micah's setup, bringing her daughter, who hadn't walked in 2 years. Micah didn't speak to the press. He didn't need to. His work did the talking. But for the first time, others spoke for him. Dr. Warren published a blog post titled, "The Boy Who Mapped Recovery Without a Degree." It read, "Micah Ellison isn't a threat to medicine. He's a mirror, one that reflects everything we forgot about patient-centered care." The system tried to recalibrate. Hospital administrators scrambled to control the narrative. A legal rep from the city called Cameron. "We understand your son is making progress, but we urge caution. This young man's methods are still under review." Cameron replied, "You've had 9 years of review. He gave me results in 9 weeks. Click. That week, Micah began keeping backup copies of everything. Logs, session notes, video files, testimonials. He started scanning them to cloud storage using a borrowed tablet Cameron gave him. When asked why, he simply said, "Truth lasts longer when it's backed up." On a rainy Friday, Micah stood at the edge of the park, watching the clouds roll in. Cameron joined him, holding 2 cups of cocoa. "Word is," Cameron said, "a foundation wants to talk to you. They think you could train others." Micah didn't take the cocoa. He didn't smile. Do they want to learn? Or do they want to own it? Cameron hesitated. Probably both. Micah nodded. "Then I'll keep doing it my way." That night, he uploaded a public folder to an anonymous server. Inside were 14 case files, all names redacted, movement charts, session transcripts, timestamp videos. One note at the top: I didn't do this to prove anything. I did it because no one else did. Use it. Or don't. But don't say we didn't show you. The folder spread. Downloaded quietly in rehab clinics. Forwarded in internal emails. Saved to desktops under new names, just in case. And in every one of those places, someone said the same thing. This isn't theory. This is proof. By the time Monday came, Micah's name wasn't whispered anymore. It was printed. On memos. On forum posts. On the corner of every whiteboard where staff quietly copied his diagrams before rounds began. Because now, Micah wasn't just a boy in the park. He was the footnote at the bottom of a paradigm shift. And the system? It had no choice but to pay attention. For a while, the silence was suspicious. After the evidence went public, after the video of Leo's unaided steps rippled through the digital veins of medicine and parenting forums, there were no public statements, no lawsuits, no calls, no men in suits showing up at the park. Just quiet. Micah noticed it immediately. The louder the proof, he said to Cameron one morning, the quieter the pushback. At first, he was right, because what came next didn't happen in front of him. It happened around him, and it started like it always does, with a whisper, shaped like a question. Is he really helping? Isn't this unsafe? Who's protecting the children? A week after the file dump, a blog post surfaced anonymously under a fake name. The title? The Boy in the Park, Hero or Harm? It didn't accuse Micah directly. It was smarter than that. It used coded language. Unregulated intervention. Potential risks. Vulnerable families. It quoted two unnamed professionals who voiced concerns that emotion and anecdote are outweighing clinical rigor. And most dangerously, it referenced unconfirmed reports of regression in one participant, though no details were given. The post was shared by a handful of mid-level therapists, then picked up by a parenting safety watchdog group, and finally found its way to a national morning show that ran a short segment. Miracle or myth? The street kid who thinks he can heal. Micah didn't watch it, but everyone around him did, and things changed. Parents who once waited eagerly at Harrington Park began hesitating. Some didn't show up. One mother, eyes full of regret, told Micah, "It's not you. I just can't take any chances." A father who had filmed every step his daughter took now posted a long comment thread defending himself. "I never said this kid was a doctor, but he helped her, and isn't that what matters?" Another responded, "Then why doesn't he have a license? Why doesn't anyone vet this stuff?" It was working. The system had learned. If you can't stop the truth, you slow it down with suspicion. Micah noticed the stares. He felt the shifts in tone when people greeted him. He wasn't the miracle kid anymore. He was the risky one. But he didn't argue. He just doubled down. His logs became more detailed. His protocols tighter. He added disclaimers to his handouts. "This is not medical advice. This is my observation. Use at your own risk. Ask questions. Always." He offered to meet with skeptical parents one-on-one. No cameras. No exercises. Just conversation. Some accepted. Most didn't. And behind the scenes, the smear campaign grew sharper. One day, a reporter arrived at the park. Not the quiet kind. The sensational kind. She wore a blazer too sharp for the wind and held her phone out like a badge. "We're doing a story on pediatric safety," she said. "Mind answering a few questions?" Micah didn't respond. Leo, now walking 10 full steps unassisted, stepped forward. "He's helping us." The reporter smiled thinly. "That may be. But do you think he should be helping kids if something goes wrong?" Leo blinked. "Nothing's gone wrong. Yet." Micah stepped between them. "If you want answers, come back with real questions." The clip still aired that night, heavily edited. The headline beneath the footage read, "Unlicensed child healer, still working with minors. Where are the adults?" Cameron was furious. He called the station. demanded retraction, legal threats. None of it landed. The story was out. Truth no longer mattered, only clicks. And the momentum shifted again. That week, Child Protective Services knocked on Cameron's door. Not loud, not angry, just polite. "We're here to follow up on a report of an unaccompanied minor living in the residence. Name Micah Ellison." Cameron stood firm. "Micah is here with my full consent. He's not alone. He's cared for. He's in school." "Still," they said, "we'll need to interview him. Alone." Cameron knew what this was. It wasn't about Micah. It was about pressure. They wanted to scare him into running, or force Cameron into cutting ties. They weren't after justice. They were after distance. Micah spoke to the agent. He didn't flinch, didn't lie. He told them about his mother, her disappearance, the nights on the street, the first day at the hospital bench. He told them about Leo, and about the others. He didn't ask to stay. He just told the truth. After an hour, the agent left. They never followed up. But the message was clear: you're being watched. Then came the worst part. A patient's family, one who had been attending sessions for over a month, suddenly claimed Micah had pushed too hard during a stretch. Their child had no injury, no regression, but the accusation was formal. Micah was issued a warning by the community center that had begun allowing him to use a small indoor space during bad weather. They suspended his access, pending clarification. The family disappeared. Micah never blamed them. He knew what fear did to people. He just wrote it in his journal. "They don't want me gone. They want me scared. If they can't erase the evidence, they'll try to erase my name from it." For the first time, Micah considered leaving. Not for good, just long enough for the noise to die down. He packed his mat one morning and told Cameron, "Maybe I'll take a week. Go quiet." Cameron didn't stop him, but he said this: "You know what they're afraid of?" Micah shook his head. "That you didn't ask for a platform, and people listened anyway. That you didn't knock on doors, and people opened them anyway. You didn't climb up the ladder. You built your own." Micah stared at the sky, then sat down, unrolled the mat again. "I'm not leaving," he said. "If I go quiet, their lie becomes the last thing people remember." A few days later, a new video surfaced, posted by a mother whose daughter Micah had helped 3 months earlier. No edits, just her daughter walking. Laughter, no soundbite, just one sentence on screen. He didn't ask to be trusted. He just showed up when no one else did. The comments poured in, this time in support. One by one, families spoke. One by one, old patients came forward, and the smear began to crack. Because no matter how loud the villain gets, reality walks on its own 2 feet. And Micah had helped too many people stand to be pushed back into silence. The cracks didn't start with a lawsuit, or a protest, or a headline. They started with a video. Not a polished, edited clip from a news station. Not a dramatic testimonial. Just a phone recording. Vertical. Wobbly. No music. A girl with cerebral palsy taking 6 steps, unaided. Her parents are off-screen, gasping. Micah is in the background, silent, nodding as she walks. No drama. No spotlight. Only a voice, her own, whispering, I did it." That video was posted by her older brother. He didn't mean to start anything, but he added a caption that struck something raw and universal. "They told my sister she'd never walk." He didn't say anything. He just showed her how. It spread fast. People didn't just watch it. They felt it. It didn't scream revolution. It whispered something worse for the people in charge. You were wrong. Then came the email leak. Someone inside St. Jude's forwarded a string of internal memos to a local reporter. Subject lines like, "Unverified treatment protocol under public scrutiny. Handle press inquiries carefully. Do not confirm progress claims. Ellison's presence continues to draw attention. Advise silence." And the worst one, if asked, deny any institutional involvement. His work has not been sanctioned. We do not recommend acknowledgement at this time. It wasn't illegal, but it looked like fear. And fear, when exposed, smells like guilt. Within 72 hours, parents who had backed away from Micah started coming back. quietly, one by one. Some didn't bring their children at first, just stood at a distance in the park, watching, not him, but the ones he had helped. Children laughing, trying, standing, falling, trying again, with no machines, no branded badges, just belief, discipline, and time. A nurse from St. Jude's commented on a viral video, "I've watched dozens of PT sessions from behind glass, but I've never seen this kind of connection. This kid doesn't treat patients. He knows them." 2 other employees replied anonymously, "He never rushed anyone. He never talked over them like we were trained to. He waited for their bodies to speak first." Micah didn't know about these posts. He wasn't tracking his image. He was tracking Leo's gait strength, and Ava's spinal balance, and Elijah's lateral range. While the internet debated, he worked, but the pressure on the system kept rising. Parents wanted answers. Funders started asking, "Why does a 10-year-old have better results than our staff?" One frustrated donor wrote, "You told us recovery was slow, expensive. Then a boy with tennis balls and hot towels did more in 3 months than your $1 million program did in a year." The board of directors held a closed-door meeting. Someone leaked a portion of the transcript. One member said, "We have 2 choices, deny it until we break, or embrace it and be reformed by it." That sentence appeared on 5,000 tweets within a day. The public had chosen their side, and it wasn't the one with the press team. But the moment the unraveling became irreversible, it came from someone no one expected. A janitor. His name was Clarence. He'd worked at St. Jude's for 22 years. Every hallway, every floor. He wasn't on social media, didn't own a smartphone, but he walked into the pediatric wing with a printed photo in his hand. It showed Micah, younger, maybe 6 or 7, sitting beside a woman kneeling with a patient. A woman Clarence recognized. "Micah Ellison," he said. "She used to work in the basement clinic. Off the books, but she helped everyone." The photo had been taken during a community day event, never published. Clarence had kept it tucked inside his locker for years. She told me, "I don't need credit. I just need to be useful." Her boy used to follow her everywhere. He looked at the administrator and said, "That boy didn't come out of nowhere. He came from her." And now, he was finishing what she started. That photo hit the local news within 24 hours. A side-by-side comparison. Micah, 9 years old, duct-tape boots, quiet focus. Janelle, 30s, confident, gentle, hands on a war vet's shoulders. The headline read, "He wasn't imitating a miracle. He was raised by one." And with that, the narrative shifted from controversy to legacy. Micah didn't speak about the photo. He didn't deny it. He didn't use it. He just folded it and kept it in his journal, behind a sheet of recovery scores from Leo's week 1. And when Leo asked about it, Micah only said, "She taught me everything, even how to keep going when people try to stop you." Then the reporter came. Not the flashy kind. This one was older, experienced, worn in. He didn't bring a crew, just a notebook and a voice recorder. He sat on a bench beside Micah after a session and said, "I'm not here to make you famous. I'm here to get it right." Micah didn't flinch. He just asked, "Are you going to ask me if I'm licensed?" "No," the man said. "I'm going to ask why you kept going when they tried to erase you." Micah paused, then looked toward Leo, Ava, and the others, sprawled on picnic blankets, stretching, giggling, comparing new movement progress, and said, "Because the body doesn't ask for permission to heal, so I don't either." That quote made it to the article. It was picked up by national outlets. Schools called. Clinics reached out. Foundations offered grants. Micah declined most of them. "If they want to help," he told Cameron, "they can come here and learn, not build something new to put my name on." But one group did it right. A local nonprofit offered a storage space, shelter, and a rotating roster of trained PTs who agreed to shadow Micah instead of replace him. He agreed, with one condition. No one touches a kid until the kid wants to be touched. And just like that, what had once been a lone mat in a park became a movement, a new kind of clinic. No white coats, no hierarchy, just recovery, by trust, by listening, by remembering what medicine was before it became business. They tried to stop him. They tried to shame him. They tried to discredit him. But what they didn't count on was everyone he'd helped standing up beside him. And when they did, the system didn't fall. It bent. It changed. Because it had no choice. Collapse doesn't always look like fire. Sometimes, it sounds like the sound of keys dropping on a desk, or an inbox flooded with resignation letters, or a single sentence in a board meeting no one wants to hear. We've lost control of the story. It began with an apology. No, not from a hospital. From a pediatric therapist. Her name was Micah Ellison. She had been one of the first to speak out against Micah. She'd reposted the early smear articles. She'd cautioned parents in online forums. But one day, she showed up at Harrington Park. Not with a microphone. Not with a press badge. With her son. A 4-year-old boy named Max, born with hypotonia. She stood beside Micah's mat, unsure if she'd be welcomed. Micah didn't hesitate. He nodded, unrolled an extra towel, and said, "Let's see what Max wants to remember." 2 weeks later, Max sat up by himself for the first time. And Nora, she posted a video. In it, she didn't explain herself. She didn't make excuses. She just showed her son, smiling. Captioned simply, "I was wrong." The dominoes fell from there. One by one, other professionals who had dismissed Micah quietly retracted their statements. Some issued formal apologies. Some donated anonymously to the nonprofit that now helped run the park sessions. One, a former hospital director, offered to fund a scholarship in Micah's mother's name. Micah declined. "If you want to honor her," he said, "start listening to your patients again." But it wasn't just individuals falling. It was institutions. St. Jude's issued a press release titled, "Renewing Our Commitment to Community-Driven Recovery." It was corporate, polished, carefully vague, but buried in paragraph 4 was the truth. We acknowledge the limitations of our previous response to community-led rehabilitation efforts. We are actively reviewing partnerships to expand inclusive healing models. Micah didn't react when he read it. Cameron handed him the printed statement. He read it once, folded it in half, and said, "That's not an apology. That's a surrender." But real collapse, that came with policy change. Under public pressure, the State Health Board launched an investigation, not into Micah, but into how many cases of recoverable conditions had been declared non-responsive in the past 5 years. The findings? 37 pediatric patients had been removed from PT programs after only 4 weeks. 19 were told to adjust to permanent immobility, despite having potential nerve responsiveness. 0 had received personalized, long-term care without insurance intervention. Those numbers weren't just damning. They were indictments. One lawmaker, who had a cousin in a wheelchair, stood in front of the state assembly and said, "A child with duct tape on his shoes did what billion-dollar systems refused to, and now we're the ones playing catch-up." By the end of the month, 3 major clinics restructured their pediatric programs. One invited Micah to consult. He refused, but he sent a letter. "If you're serious about change, start by putting kids in the center of the room again. Not data, not billing codes. Kids." Then came the lawsuits. Not against Micah, against hospitals, against therapists, against insurance providers who had denied prolonged treatment to children that Micah had now helped walk, stretch, stand, live. Cameron watched it all unfold from a distance. He didn't speak to the press, didn't do interviews. But when one reporter caught up to him outside a coffee shop and asked, "How do you explain it?" he simply said, he just never stopped asking the body what it needed. And yet, even as the world shifted, Micah didn't. He still came to the park every morning. Same mat, same crate, same calm. Sometimes 10 kids showed up. Sometimes only 1. Sometimes no one came. He still unrolled the mat. He still waited. Because he understood what the system never had. Healing doesn't need a crowd. It needs consistency. One afternoon, a father approached him with a business card. "I represent a center in New York," he said. We'd like to fly you in. Talk about scaling this model. Micah shook his head. I'm not model. The man frowned. Well, surely you want to grow. Micah interrupted gently. I don't want a brand. I want a blueprint. If you want to build this somewhere else, I'll teach you. But not for cameras. Not for profit. For the next kid. Cameron once asked him, weeks later, why didn't you take any of their money? Micah was quiet for a long time. Then he said, my mom never charged $1. She said healing's like music. If you charge for every note, no one ever sings. Collapse doesn't always look like people being fired. Sometimes it's people stepping aside. A hospital director resigned quietly. A therapy coordinator went on indefinite leave. And the systems they left behind started to rebuild. Not from scratch. From Micah. From his mat. His pages of notes. His diagrams. His quiet voice saying, again, slower. You're almost there. Even Harvard reached out. A professor of neurology emailed, I'd like to study your approach. We could publish something together. Micah didn't reply. A week later, the professor received a package. Inside were 100 photocopies of Micah's handwritten notes, all marked with, you don't need my name. Just use the work. And then, finally, something unexpected happened. A mother who had once threatened to sue showed up in the park. Alone. No child. No lawyer. Just her. She walked up to Micah, hands trembling, and said, I didn't believe you. I thought you were dangerous. But my son, he still asks about you. Micah didn't smile. Didn't say, I understand. He just handed her a copy of a worksheet, titled, Things Your Body Might Still Remember, and walked away. Collapse isn't loud. It's a door that doesn't slam. It's an inbox full of unanswered questions. It's a boy in a park, sitting on a mat, while the world scrambles to catch up. It's the realization that you were wrong, and the person you were wrong about never needed revenge. Just enough space to keep doing the right thing. By the time the world admitted he was right, Micah had stopped waiting for them to. He didn't track news cycles anymore. He didn't read headlines or open letters or panels inviting him to share his experience. He was still at Harrington Park. Same mat, same rhythm, still working with kids who had been told no so many times that they'd started to believe it. Micah never said yes like a promise. He said it like a door left open, and that was enough. But reckoning doesn't need invitations. It just needs people to come back. One of the first was the man in the suit. Micah didn't remember his name, only that he'd once tried to get him removed from the park. A compliance officer, or a city rep, or something in between. Someone who wore a badge and didn't like uncertainty. He didn't come with cameras or crew. He came alone, stood at the edge of the grass, watched as Micah worked with a 6-year-old girl recovering from a spinal tumor. Waited. Then, when Micah stood to pack up, the man approached. He cleared his throat. Do you remember me? Micah looked at him. I remember your tone. The man winced. I was wrong, he said. Micah didn't nod, didn't smile, just looked at him, not with anger, but clarity. The man continued. I thought I was protecting people, but I was protecting the wrong ones. Micah finally spoke. Did it cost you anything? The man blinked. What? The apology. Did it cost you anything real? Silence. No, he admitted. Micah picked up the towel, folded it once. Then maybe it's not enough yet. The next was a neighbor. Not from Micah's world, from Cameron's. The kind who smiled too much and said too little. Weeks earlier, she'd reported suspicious activity when Micah first moved in, claimed to be worried about neighborhood safety. Now, she stood on Cameron's porch, holding a plate of muffins. Cameron opened the door. She looked sheepish. I just thought I'd stop by, Ann. No need, Cameron said. He was polite, but firm. She lingered. I just didn't know. He shrugged. You didn't ask. Then came Mrs. Ridley, Leo's old-school principal. She had called Micah a distraction when he was first spotted with Leo on school grounds, had warned staff to avoid non-verified personnel. Now she was at the park, watching Leo run across the grass. Not limp, not struggle. Run. She wiped her eyes behind sunglasses and approached Cameron. I didn't realize he'd come this far, she whispered. He had help, Cameron said. She nodded. I know. I was one of the people who tried to stop it. Cameron looked at her for a long time, then said without malice, Then you were part of the reason he needed it. Micah didn't look for closure. He didn't need it. He wasn't here to collect apologies. But he never refused the truth when it arrived. Some people came not to be forgiven, but to confess. A nurse, a former therapist, a skeptical parent who once warned others not to get their hopes up. They came, not all at once, not loudly, but they came, one by one. And each time, Micah did the same thing. He let them speak. Then he went back to work, because reckoning isn't about revenge. It's about reality being acknowledged, even when it hurts. One day, a boy named Jalen showed up. He was older than the others, 12, maybe 13. He didn't need help walking. He needed help processing. He had been in the same rehab program as Leo once. Same prognosis. But no one like Micah ever came for him. And by the time Jalen's family could afford private care, he'd lost trust in the process. He sat at the edge of the mat and watched Micah work with a smaller child. When the session ended, Jalen asked quietly, Why didn't you find me? Micah looked up. I didn't know you needed finding. Jalen nodded slowly. His voice broke. I did. Micah didn't try to fix it. Didn't offer therapy. Didn't offer redemption. He just said, I'm here now. And Jalen came back the next day. Not for healing. For peace. Cameron once asked Micah, Do you think everyone who tried to shut you down really believed they were right? Micah shook his head. I think some did. I think most were just scared. Because if I was right, then they had to ask why they weren't helping more. Reckoning is a mirror. Micah held it up without ever lifting his voice. And people saw themselves. Some looked away. Some looked harder. But none could unsee it. Even Leo, now stronger than ever, began to understand it differently. One day, after a session, he sat next to Micah and asked, Do you hate them? Micah didn't answer right away. He traced the edge of the mat with his finger, then said, No. Why not? Because hating them wouldn't have helped you walk. Leo nodded, but his face twisted. I still do sometimes. That's okay, Micah said, but don't let it take space where hope is supposed to live. One afternoon, a local official asked to host a public recognition ceremony for Micah. We want to give you a certificate. Name a day after you. Micah declined. I don't want a day. I want more kids walking. The official smiled awkwardly. We can do both. Micah didn't smile back. If it's between a speech and a pair of legs moving again, I pick the legs. Every time. The man didn't bring it up again. Later, Micah wrote in his notebook, They want to make me a symbol, but I'm not one. I'm a process, and I'm still happening. Reckoning doesn't come all at once. It trickles in, through hesitant voices, through changed minds, through silent acknowledgments. A teacher who once warned students away from Micah now used his diagrams in class. A clinic director who once ignored his emails now quoted his phrasing in policy reform. Micah saw it. He didn't chase credit. He just added a line in his notebook. When the truth shows up late, it still matters. He was no longer the beggar boy outside the hospital. No longer the risk. No longer the rumor. He was the standard. And those who once dismissed him had to rebuild from that, brick by brick, step by step, just like his kids had learned to do. The sky above St. Jude's Hospital looked exactly as it had the first day Micah sat outside it. Gray, unbothered, not stormy, not sunny, just indifferent. The city moved around him as if nothing had happened, as if the boy who once sat on the cold concrete ledge, wrapped in a two-large jacket with duct-taped boots, had never existed. But he had, and now he was back, not to be seen, not to be recognized, but to finish something. He didn't tell anyone where he was going, not Cameron, not Leo, not the volunteers or the families at the park. This wasn't about them. This was for her, the woman who started it all, whose hands healed where science gave up, who vanished without applause or warning. Micah stood across the street from the hospital doors. He stared at the bench, the one he used to sleep on, the one he used to wait beside, hoping someone would ask who he was, why he was alone, if he needed help. No one ever did. He crossed the street, walked up the ramp, and sat on it again. It felt smaller now. Or maybe he'd just grown. He placed a folded sheet of paper beside him. It had her name written across the top. Micah Ellison. Physical methodology notes, unpublished. Below it was a full transcription of every technique Micah had recreated, refined, and expanded. Page after page of mapped recovery pathways. Muscle reactivation strategies. Patient language cues. He didn't include his name. He didn't have to. He clipped the bundle together and slipped it under the glass door at the side entrance marked Clinical Research Submissions Only. No ceremony, just a quiet offering, like she would have done. Then he walked, not back to the park, but through the places he used to drift. The alley behind the bakery where the manager once let him sleep under a tarp. The sheltered doorway where he lost his backpack to a drunk man looking for medicine. The church steps where he first unfolded his mother's old diagram and traced the nerve group with a trembling finger. Every spot still carried the weight of silence, but it didn't press on him anymore. He could walk through them now, not as a shadow, but as someone who had made it through. He ended the walk at a small community library, the same one his mother had once taken him to, back when things were still whole. He approached the front desk, holding a plain brown envelope. Inside, a hand-drawn book. No copyright, no price tag, just pencil sketches, charts, and small instructions scrawled between them. Titled, "If You've Been Told It's Over, Read This First." The librarian, an older woman with silver glasses, looked up. "This for submission?" Micah nodded. "Donation. For anyone who needs it." She took it, read the title again, and looked back at him. "What's your name?" He smiled faintly. "Doesn't matter. What matters is who reads it next." Outside, the wind had picked up, but he didn't feel cold. For the first time in a long time, he wasn't bracing himself. He just walked, one hand in his pocket, the other brushing along the rail of a staircase he used to sleep beneath. He stopped at the bottom, exhaled, then climbed. Slow, steady, each step a goodbye. At the top, on a small landing, there was a door. It wasn't locked. Micah pushed it open, revealing a tiny and used storage room in the side of the old rec center. No one had touched it in years. Dust floated like ghosts in the air. He stepped in, reached into his jacket, and pulled out the last thing he had left from her. A photo. Faded, cracked, but clear. Her hands on a man's shoulders. Her smile soft but certain. Him, 5 years old, in the corner, watching her with wide eyes. He placed the photo on a shelf, sat down, and for the first time in months, let himself cry. Not from pain, from completion. Micah never wanted a monument. He never wanted applause. He only ever wanted to return what was given, to pass on what had once saved him. 2 weeks later, the library book went viral on a parenting forum. Someone found it, copied every page, and shared it online. The title struck a chord. "If You've Been Told It's Over, Read This First." Thousands of reposts. Therapists printing it off and taping pages to clinic walls. One physical therapy center in rural Oklahoma started a Micah Method class, entirely voluntary, based on the handwritten guide. They mailed him a thank you card. It was forwarded by Cameron, who had no idea where Micah had gone. The card said, "You helped a boy here say his first sentence." It was, "Try again, Mama." Micah never responded, but he smiled when he read it. Cameron kept the park sessions running. Parents volunteered. PTs came, not to lead, but to listen. A new sign was painted and placed beside the mat Micah once rolled out alone. It read, "The station, where the body remembers. No cost, no shame, no promises, just possibility." Leo came every Saturday, even when he didn't need to. He helped the younger kids balance on their first steps. Sometimes they asked him if Micah was coming back. He always said the same thing. He never left. "You're standing on his words. Isa once asked her father, "Where do people like Micah go?" Cameron thought for a long time, then said, "Somewhere quiet, to build something else, something bigger than applause." Micah did return once, not to stay, just to see. He stood across from the park at dusk, watched as 4 children did their warm-ups, laughing, stretching, trusting each other. A new volunteer was handing out laminated sheets of instructions, copies of his original pages. He smiled. Not pride, not ownership, just peace. Then he turned, walked away, and didn't look back. The story didn't end because a boy proved the world wrong. It ended because he didn't need to anymore. The world could catch up, or not. He was already building the next thing. He didn't need them to remember his name. He needed them to remember the work. Because names fade, but steps taken, they echo, and he made the world louder with every footfall.